Disc Golf Chris here, and we're in the middle of quarantine 2020, so Rodney and I thought it'd be a good time to get our in the bag videos out to you. So this is what's in my bag for 2020. First off, my bag, I am using a grip bag with a buzz on it. I'm a big fan of this bag. It's very comfortable, holds about 18 to 20 discs down in the main pocket, depending on how many putters, mid-ranges you have compared to drivers. 2 or 3 putters up top, but we're not here to talk about my bag, so I'm going to get right into my putters. I am putting with a Roach almost exclusively these days. Throw a zone in there for the windy days, but for the most part I'm throwing a Roach. This is my Jawbreaker Roach. I like the grip of the Jawbreaker Roach, and Jawbreaker seems to have a little bit extra glide. The Jawbreaker plastic is relatively soft, so it catches the chains and it will not bounce off too hard for the most part. When it gets cold, Jawbreaker is still great. It's still grippy. Sometimes the new Jawbreaker Roaches, especially in the cold, are a little bit overstable, so I'll bring in a soft X Roach for the winter. This has been in my bag for the past few months. Soft, so hits the metal and it just drops in. Pretty nice, but it's getting warm again, so I'm probably going to take this out of my bag soon. And then I use a titanium Roach for my main driving putter. Titanium holds a little extra torque, so I can get this out pretty far, good and straight. I used to drive with a Big Z Roach, and it's a great driving putter, but it turns a little bit more. The titanium Roach won't turn quite as much. I can get this a good 225 that's almost dead straight. Once I get to 220, 250, 275, got a nice turn on it, but it comes back, very reliable. I also have a Focus. This is a crystal Focus. I used to putt with the Focus. I had a couple different plastics, and I actually used to putt with these crystal Focuses, but I've been told that if you putt with premium plastic, you might be a serial killer. So Joey, don't worry, I'm not putting premium plastic anymore. This is just my approach putter. The Focus is nice because it's a mid to low glide putter, so it's a little more controllable, and it's very, very straight. It doesn't move side to side very much. I typically use this anywhere from 75 up to about 200. Above 200, I'm throwing it too hard, but this is a great approach disc, especially when you have tight areas or any sort of hazards behind the basket. Next, I have my zones. The Jawbreaker Zone is one of my most used zones. Again, great plastic, great grip. Jawbreaker Zone is not as overstable as some of the other plastics. Jawbreaker Zone is very straight. It's got a good reliable fade on it, but not super hard. So it's excellent for approaches, especially when you have open areas or you need a little precision, a little extra consistency. But it's not incredibly beefy. When I really want beef, I go with this guy. This is my Crystal Flex Zone. This is very beefy. It's a little bit lower glide, so it's very, very consistent. The Flex obviously allows this one to drop and hit the basket or hit the ground without bouncing too much. I use this one in the winter because it's flexible and it doesn't skip too much because it's soft. But as the warmer months come along, I switch over to this MDGO Sparkle Zone. If you've seen Rodney's in the bag, then you've seen his too. This is very beefy, very consistent, low glide for a zone. And it hits hard, and I can get this thing to skip pretty good too. So this is an excellent utility. I use this frequently for a lot of consistent approaches, or especially short hyzers when I need to get out of trouble. Moving up to mid-range, I've got a Buzz OS. This is one of my go-to approach. It's incredibly consistent, similar to zone. It goes out there very straight and then drops hard. I can get this to skip or to drop. And it's also good on forehands. I wouldn't consider this flashy, but it's very consistent, and I've hit quite a few baskets bounced off the top with the Buzz OS, but I've not gotten ace with it yet. And into my mid-range, I throw Buzzes almost exclusively for my mid-range. The reason I like the Buzz is because it's controllable, it's versatile, comes in a lot of different plastics, and the different weights do different things. So this is this is about 170 grams. Sometimes I'll go down to about 167, 168 Z-Buzz. And this has a nice late turn to it. I can hit 250 to 300 pretty darn straight, but once I'm getting into the 300, 325 range, it's got a late turn on it. It's controllable considering how understable this one is. And then this is my stable buzz. This one, yeah, I believe this is a 175, maybe 177, and it's very straight and finishes with a consistent fade. This one I got from the Birchfield Open. Kind of cool disc, but it's another tournament disc, so I don't mind if I lose this too much. But I do occasionally carry one of these buzzes. Not in my bag right now, but this is a 180 gram Glow Halloween buzz. I'm a little more afraid to lose this one, so I don't carry it in my bag as much, but this one is very consistent, relatively low glide for a buzz, so it's reliable and it fades hard. So this one is very accurate. I like this a lot, but don't throw it in your water. And then this one is right in the middle. I like this one. If you can see the dye job I did on it, it's starting to fade a little bit. This one's right in the middle. I can get it to turn. I can get it to fade. This is probably the most versatile buzz that I have. I don't throw it in the winter months. Obviously, it's hard to find in the snow, but now that it's getting warm, this might end up back in my bag. It might actually bump out the other two buzzes in favor of this being my main mid-range altogether. Moving up into fairway drivers, I've been throwing XLs lately. I've got a Flex XL, which is a little bit understable, and a new ESP Swirl XL, which is overstable, so I can split the fairway. I like the XL a lot because it's got a thin rim, so it's comfortable. These things are very straight and controllable. They're very versatile. I can get long straight drives, I can get turns on them, I can throw them overhand if I need to. They're also a little bit lower glide than some of the newer fairway drivers that have come out from various companies, and I like that because it makes it a little bit more controllable. The XLs, I also have this XL, ZXL, which is kind of right in the middle of the two of those, and this is a great one for the summer. Prior to the XL, I had actually been throwing Cyclones, another discontinued disc. You can see that I like old discs. The main difference that I found is Cyclones have a thinner rim and wider diameter, so they can be used for a similar purpose, but they're not quite as consistent in the wind. So I can get a long float on them, and I can hit real tight lines, long tight lines, because they're a little bit slower. But out here in Michigan with the winds and the hills, I ended up throwing XLs. This is the Ledgestone Special Edition Cyclone ESP, a little more understable, and this is a standard Z Cyclone. This one hasn't been around for years. This is a little bit more overstable, so again, split the fairway on both sides. Then moving up, I have a couple of Undertakers. These are my first control driver. Not super overstable, but they're certainly not understable. Again, a thin rim, relatively thin rim, fits nicely. This is just all-around decent, good disc, very consistent and reliable. I used to throw Trackers, which were great discs, but they're very overstable at the finish. So it took me a while to get used to the Undertakers because they're very similar, but they don't finish as hard. But the nice thing is that they fade a little bit more forward. This titanium Undertaker is great. This is incredibly dead straight Undertaker, whereas the Z Flex Undertaker turns a little bit more. So again, I like to have a couple of different plastics so I can use them for different purposes. And then the titanium Undertaker is also one of my favorite overhand discs. It's certainly not a long distance overhand disc, but it's very, very accurate. I can get a very smooth release off of this, and if I'm throwing it high over trees, I can get a very accurate drop, control where the drop lands and which direction it rolls. So this is one of my main go-to control drivers when I don't need a ton of distance, when I need some decent distance but very controllable. After the Undertaker, I've got a DGA Sail. This is the only non-Discraft disc in my bag. It's a DGA molded by Discraft. This one is the Infinite Discs VIP Series Swirl ESP Sail. So I don't necessarily know how this compares to other plastics in the sail yet, but I'll find that out this year. I'll do some testing. The sail is similar to a Heat, which I used to throw, but for me, it's a little bit more consistent. Flips up very nicely. I use this for long anhydrous or shorter, something like 300 to 350 touch shots where I need something I can throw very lightly. But this flips very nice and consistent, and it's got a ton of float on it. So I've been able to bomb this close to 400 a few times just by throwing it way up in the air. After that, I have my crushes. Crush is probably my favorite disc ever. If you've seen any of my articles or listened to me talk before, you'll know how much I love the Crush. This is an old disc. I've been throwing the Crush for probably about 15 years. It's obviously discontinued now, so I stocked up on them, but for a 10-speed, it's got a relatively thin rim that fits nicely in my hand. Very overstable and consistent, but the thing I like about the Crush is it has just a touch of turn, maybe a 0.5 turn, so not very much, but just enough that I can get a little extra distance and work it a little bit. I can throw this forehand. Don't particularly like it overhand, it cuts too much, but this Crush, these two are both ESP. This is my heavier Crush that I use for wind and placement shots, and this is my lighter weight Crush, a 169 Crush that I use as my primary, usually my primary driver when I have a chance to get a little extra distance, a little more workability. I do sometimes carry got a couple of Z Crushes in stock if I need some water. These make great water discs, or if I just need some extra consistency with the wind. They're a little bit lower glide and easier to control. So after the Crush, I throw Punishers. These are my next go-to driver. But these are really, I need to have a little bit more area. I'm going for more distance when I'm throwing the Punisher. Long, straight discs, they're excellent. They flip up just a little bit. Titanium Punisher, I'm throwing a 168, I think, maybe 169. I can get some pretty good distance on this, but not max distance. It's got a very hard fade at the end, so I typically only throw this when I've got a pretty good opening at the end. And this is my Infinite Discs Tiki Stamp Glow Punisher. This one's very overstable. This is when I come into wind, or when I need a big hyzer, or if I really need a good overhand shot through some trees or something like that. And finally, I have my cranks. The titanium crank is really what allowed me to switch to entirely Discraft. Prior to that, I'd been throwing, I think, a Shrike. Very long distance, consistent disc. The problem with most cranks is they flip too much for me, especially with such a wide rim. I can't get a real consistent release sometimes, so it was hard for me to control when they flipped and when they didn't flip. But the titanium crank, I throw a lightweight 167 gram titanium. This started out super overstable, so it would never flip. And it's broken into a very nice long straight disc with a nice panning turn on it, and it comes back. So this is my maximum distance disc. I typically throw 425 with it. I've hit up to 450, close to 475 a couple of times, obviously not consistently, but this is very consistent given that it's a super long distance disc for me. And the Z crank it's very flippy. I usually only use this when I need a good turn or if I have a big tailwind. So I hope you're all able to get out and throw. Don't forget to check out our flight charts. You can check out the flight patterns of all the discs that I have. Compare them to the discs that you're throwing. Go check out Infinite Discs. Most of our discs, we get them from Infinite. I've showed you the...
Before I go, I wanted to show you our flight chart tool that was used to generate the charts that you saw in this video. You can view individual discs, compare them at different arm speeds, and even build a visualization of your bag. We also have a putter selector to help you narrow down what putters you should test based on some important characteristics. And don't forget to check out our plastic database where you can compare plastics across all manufacturers. Thanks so much for watching. When it's safe, get out there and just throw.